So even though the benefits of hearing the child's voice are well known, it isn't easy. And it's not easy for the child who's trying to express themselves, and it's not easy for the adult who's trying to hear and make sense of what that child is trying to communicate.
Quite often, particularly as professionals, but also as families, as parents, as friends, we don't always have time on our side. We don't always have the time and the space to give to the child or young person to be able to speak to us. Also in that, we can think about the environment that we're in. Quite often our lives are busy and chaotic and loud, and that's not always conducive to having a conversation with a child or young person, particularly when it's of a sensitive nature.
So a lot of my work is within schools, which are obviously really busy environments. So sometimes there are barriers to hearing what children think and want, because sometimes you might have to act really quickly without being able to get everybody's view. Sometimes for the children themselves, they don't feel that they can trust adults with what they want to say, or they may have been let down before, so they're reluctant to share what they're thinking.
Maybe they have a bad relationship with adults at home, which could potentially have a knock-on effect with how they approach and deal with adults in their life in general, school teachers, parents, friends or neighbours, because of a bad relationship they've experienced. So it may give them a bad offset on what a normal and healthy relationship looks like. If they feel as if they're not being listened to, as we said, they won't go back because they feel like they're not being heard. I think one thing that could really scare a child off is if an adult kind of takes the situation into their own hands but doesn't then inform the child on what they're going to do and act on it. So if you went to a school teacher or something and they said, oh, like I'm experiencing bullying, and then the adult just turned around and was like, oh, I'll handle it. That could immediately panic mode for the child, and then I think they'll just, I think that'll freak them out and it isn't healthy.
So we're thinking about working with infants specifically and thinking about how this age range are usually pre-verbal, and they are very much still developing their speech and language skills. And so thinking about that can be really tricky, understandably, to start capturing the voice of the infant. We know that babies don't come with manuals, unfortunately, so we're not kind of given instructions about how to do this, and we're not really always given much training about how to identify their voice.
So when we're thinking about children with additional needs and special educational needs, they may have some communication barriers, so they may not be verbal, or they may have a limited range of vocabulary, so they may not be able to express exactly what they're worried about or what's happening to them. So we need to be really sensitive to those needs and understand the way that that child communicates. It's also worth remembering that for some children with a high level of special educational need, they might be very reliant on adult support, and that they may feel that if something is not quite right with that adult support, they're unable to say what it is because they might feel a sense of disloyalty to the person that's supporting them, or they might feel worried about what might happen to that person, because there are lots of complex emotions there in terms of care and trust and love.
Something that might stop young people from kind of expressing their opinions is if they're in a situation where they don't particularly feel safe or comfortable. And I think it's really important to give young people kind of a safe space in which they feel that they can express themselves.
I think systems are sometimes designed for adults, so meetings, for example, are often in quite clinical rooms with very long agendas, professional language, and finding ways to allow children to access those is really important.